Common cuckoo. The common cuckoo has figured out something that every exhausted parent wishes was an option. Make someone else raise your kids. This bird, found across Europe, Asia, and Africa, is one of nature's most accomplished con artists, and it pulls off its scam in about 3 seconds flat. A female cuckoo watches a target nest for days, memorizing the host's egg pattern, then darts in the moment the owners leave, lays her single egg, and disappears before she's even noticed. What makes this particularly ruthless is that she's incubated the egg internally for an extra 24 hours before laying, so it hatches first. The blind, featherless newborn then uses its back to heave every other egg over the side of the nest before its eyes even open. Now alone it begins making an astonishing noise. A call that mimics an entire brood of hungry chicks, tricking its exhausted foster parents into delivering 3 times the normal amount of food. To ensure it even gets access to the nest, the common cuckoo has evolved barred underparts nearly identical to a sparrowhawk, a predator that sends small birds fleeing in panic. It's not just a freeloader, it's a disguise artist, a timing specialist, and a murderer, all before it can see. Brown-headed cowbird. The brown-headed cowbird takes a blunter approach to the same problem. Where the common cuckoo is a specialist, the cowbird is a generalist, and a staggeringly successful one. It has documented host species numbering over 221, more than almost any brood parasite on Earth. Originally a nomadic bird that followed massive bison herds across North America, the cowbird could never stay in one place long enough to raise young, so it simply never evolved to do so. Instead, females scatter their eggs across dozens of different nests every season. The cowbird chick doesn't bother ejecting the host's eggs. It just grows faster, begs louder, and monopolizes the food, often leading to the starvation of the host's own chicks. What makes the cowbird genuinely sinister is the so-called mafia hypothesis, supported by experimental evidence. If a host bird rejects or destroys the cowbird's egg, the cowbird returns and destroys the entire nest, forcing the host to start over. It isn't just parasitism, and it's extortion. The cowbird's spread into new regions due to habitat fragmentation has contributed to the decline of several songbird populations across North America, turning a behavioral quirk into an ecological crisis. Greater honeyguide. The greater honeyguide, found across sub-Saharan Africa, runs 2 completely separate slavery operations simultaneously, and each is more astonishing than the last. Like the cuckoo, it is an obligate brood parasite, laying its eggs in the dark cavity nests of species like bee-eaters and wood hoopoes. The honeyguide chick is born with a pair of sharp, hook-like tips on its bill, a biological weapon it uses while still blind to stab its nestmates to death. Once the competition is gone, the hook disappears within about 2 weeks, its purpose served. But the honeyguide's second operation is something that researchers have documented since 1989 in the journal Science. It actively recruits humans as honey hunters. The bird gives a distinctive chattering call, then leads people through the bush toward wild beehives, sometimes over a kilometer away. The human breaks open the hive, takes the honey, and leaves behind the beeswax and larvae, which is exactly what the honeyguide wanted all along. Different human communities across Africa have evolved their own distinct signals to communicate back to the bird, and the honeyguide has learned each local call. The relationship is so ancient, some researchers believe it predates modern human behavior by hundreds of thousands of years. Polyergus slave-making ants. Polyergus ants have taken enslavement to an extreme so total that they can no longer function without it. Found across North America, Europe, and Asia, these obligate slave makers are born soldiers. Their mandibles are curved and razor-sharp, perfectly shaped for piercing armor and spreading panic, and completely useless for feeding themselves or caring for their own larvae. Everything else in the colony is done by formica ants, captured in raids that can seize up to 14,000 pupae in a single season. A Polyergus queen begins the whole operation by infiltrating a formica nest, killing or driving off the host queen, and chemically mimicking her scent so convincingly that the workers adopt the invader as their own. The captured pupae are brought back and imprinted on the slave-maker colony's smell. So when they hatch, they work loyally, grooming their captors, defending the nest, foraging, with no apparent awareness that anything is wrong. Some enslaved formica workers even participate in raids against their own original colonies. But researchers in 2009 discovered that the slaves are not entirely passive. Enslaved temnothorax workers have been observed systematically killing up to 2/3 of the slave-maker brood, destroying future generations of their oppressors in a quiet, patient act of sabotage. Entomologist Pierre Huber first described this system in 1810, and it's been disturbing people ever since. Formica sanguinea, blood red ant. While Polyergus cannot survive without slaves, the blood red ant Formica sanguinea represents a more flexible version of the same instinct. Found across Europe and Asia, this species can live entirely independently. Lab studies confirmed that colonies stripped of their slaves resume full self-sufficiency within about 30 days. But when slaves are available, they use them, boosting colony efficiency and size dramatically. The raid is a two-step operation. Scouts locate a target Formica nest and lay a pheromone trail back to their own colony. Within seconds, the trail is live and a wave of blood-red raiders follows it to the target, causing mass panic in the host colony. Workers flee rather than fight, and the raiders seize as many larvae and pupae as they can carry. Brought home, those captured young imprint on their new colony's chemical profile and spend their lives working for a colony that isn't theirs. The F. sanguinea system is considered a transitional form in the evolution of ant slavery, sitting between free-living species and total obligate parasites like Polyergus. A glimpse of how an entire species can, over evolutionary time, gradually outsource more and more of its own survival. Emerald jewel wasp. The emerald jewel wasp, Ampulex compressa, performs what may be the most surgically precise act of biological control on Earth. This small metallic green wasp found across tropical regions targets the American cockroach, a creature several times its size, and rather than killing it, turns it into a compliant, living nursery. The attack begins with a sting to the cockroach's first thoracic ganglion, temporarily paralyzing its front legs. The wasp then drives its stinger directly into the brain, using sensory bumps on the stinger tip to feel through brain tissue and find the exact ganglia controlling the escape reflex. The venom blocks octopamine, the neurotransmitter responsible for initiating flight and movement, leaving the cockroach calm, standing, and incapable of running away. The wasp then bites off the cockroach's antennae and leads it by the stubs into a burrow, not dragging it, but walking alongside it as the roach follows obediently, like a dog on a leash. A single egg is laid on the cockroach's leg, the burrow is sealed, and the roach remains alive and unresisting for 7 to 8 days, while the larva feeds on its insides. Research by biologist Ken Catania at Vanderbilt University found that if anything blocks the egg-laying site, the wasp stings the same target up to 100 times in a mechanically relentless loop. A reminder that the wasp itself is following programming it cannot override. Gipantles wasp. The Gipantles wasp, found in Costa Rica and elsewhere, has solved the problem of protecting its vulnerable pupae in a genuinely horrifying way. It turns its host into a living bodyguard. The female injects her eggs directly into a living caterpillar, and the larvae hatch and grow inside it, carefully feeding on bodily fluids while deliberately avoiding vital organs to keep the host alive as long as possible. When the time comes, up to 80 larvae chew their way out through the caterpillar's skin and cluster nearby to spin their cocoons. What happens next is what makes this case extraordinary. The caterpillar, still alive, stops eating entirely and stations itself directly over the cluster. When any predator approaches, it thrashes its head with violent, rapid swings, batting away threats to the very larvae that just ate through it. The caterpillar only dies once the pupae fully develop. Researchers describe it as one of the only known examples of host manipulation that continues after the parasite has already left the host's body. The caterpillar, by some mechanism still being studied, is compelled to sacrifice its remaining hours protecting the offspring of its tormentors. Ophiocordyceps fungus. Ophiocordyceps unilateralis, the zombie ant fungus, is so specialized that each of its many subspecies targets a single species of ant and nothing else. A spore lands on an ant's exoskeleton somewhere in a tropical forest, releases enzymes that dissolve through the shell and begins to replicate through the body's tissues. The fungus spreads quietly and detectably for days, somehow preventing the ant from behaving strangely enough to be dragged out by the colony's undertakers. Then, with apparent precision, it reaches the brain. The infected ant leaves the colony at around noon, climbs approximately 25 centimeters off the ground, almost always to the underside of a leaf, and bites into a leaf vein with a grip so powerful, researchers call it a death bite. The fungus then kills the ant and erupts a stalk out the back of its head, raining spores down onto the colony's foraging trails directly below. The positioning is not accidental. Fossilized leaves showing the same distinctive death bite scars have been found dating back roughly 48 million years, meaning this system was already perfected tens of millions of years before humans existed. It was so compelling it inspired the premise of the video game The Last of Us, though in nature it only targets ants. Lancet liver fluke. The Lancet liver fluke, Dicrocoelium dendriticum, runs the longest and strangest slavery operation of any organism on this list, spanning 3 entirely different hosts and sequence. Its adult form lives in the liver of a sheep or cow, shedding eggs into the animal's manure. Snails eat the manure, and the hatching larvae irritate the snail's intestines until the snail encases them in slime balls and vomits them out onto vegetation. Ants eat the slime balls, and from there the fluke takes full control. The parasites spread through the ant's body, and a few migrate specifically to a region of the brain controlling biting behavior. Those ants begin a bizarre nightly routine. When temperatures drop in the evening, they climb to the top of a grass blade, lock their jaws shut, and wait, completely exposed, in the exact position most likely to be grazed by passing sheep or cattle. When the sun rises and temperatures climb, because overheating would kill the ant and end the fluke's operation, the ant releases its grip and goes back to normal ant behavior for the rest of the day, before repeating the whole sequence again at dusk. This continues night after night, until the ant is finally eaten. The fluke doesn't burn through its host. It reuses it over and over, squeezing every possible chance out of an asset it has spent considerable evolutionary effort to acquire. If you want to see more, click the video on screen now.